So as part of our series of videos looking at how to write essays, we're going to have a little conversation about unacceptable academic practice. Reen, what is unacceptable academic practice?
Well, the university defines unacceptable academic practice as when you gain an unfair advantage in some way. So, for example, you take someone else's words and you pretend they're your own words.
I think the first thing to point out is that the reason why as a university it's very important that there is a policy towards unacceptable academic practice is to maintain fairness. As you said, it's about stopping people getting an unfair advantage over other students. So this is really about protecting the quality of the overall degree, making sure that not one student isn't cheating in order to get that unfair advantage. The other thing which is very important is that if you're engaging in unacceptable academic practice, you're not developing your own ideas effectively. You're losing the opportunity within the course of the degree to become a better historian, to work better, to write better, to think better. Another thing which is really important and which you do gain by engaging with these rules is that the rules make sense outside of the university as well as inside. That once you go into the wider world, issues to do with plagiarism continue to be very, very important. And we've seen only in recent months cases of songs, logos, books, music being taken and having serious ramifications when those things become found out to be copied or taken from elsewhere.
One type of unacceptable academic practice is collusion. So what does this mean? Is that you're working with another person. So say that we've got an essay to write for a module and I and Matt get together and we decide we'll work on this together and we'll create an essay together and we'll submit it as our own work individually. Well, that is obviously unacceptable. You've got the benefit of two people working on that essay. So make sure that you do not do that in your work. Another type of unacceptable academic practice is recycling of text or data. So what does this mean? Well, say you've written an essay for one module and had a mark for it, and then you decide in another module, oh, I'll just copy and paste a few sections from another essay into this essay. Well, that is also an acceptable academic practice. And because you've already been marked for that, you've already had marks for it, you've already had feedback on it, and therefore it's unfair to present, so copy and paste chunks from one essay into another essay. And then the third type of unacceptable academic practice is plagiarism, which means you're taking someone else's words and their ideas and pretending they're your words or your ideas.
So, for example, what?
Well, so say that you've read a book, you found it very interesting, very useful, and you're just copying words from that book or from that article into your own work and pretending your own words. Or also, if you've gone onto even Wikipedia or a site on the internet and copying and pasting sections from there, that is also unacceptable. Also, another thing that is unacceptable, of course, is taking or buying an essay from online. It isn't your own work, it's someone else's work, but you're pretending it's your own work. And this goes for translation as well. So say you found something in one language, but you're writing in another language, well, it's also unacceptable just to translate word for word and pretend they're your own words. So all these things are unacceptable, especially if you do not reference, if you don't give a reference to say where these ideas are from. And also changing a word here or there, that's not acceptable either, because if you're just changing a few words, you're basically taking the work of the other person. So if it is someone else's work, you need to use quotation marks to show these are the words of another person and give a reference to show where it's come from.
But we're not saying here to not quote.
No, not at all.
Okay, so what happens if you do plagiarise?
Right, good question. Well, if you do plagiarise, the repercussions can be quite serious. What happens originally, so you submit your work on Turnitin, and Turnitin automatically produces a report on how original your work is, so how much of your text matches text which is found in other places. So just to show you what your marker sees after you've submitted your essay, so your essay will then appear and there'll be a percentage. So this is just an example, made up example here. It's not someone's proper, real essay. And it shows there 75% similarity. And it gives you all the different sources, so Wikipedia, another student's essay, and so on. So what happens if the marker sees this? Well, obviously they then start going in and investigating. If something, not even this serious, something looks a bit fishy, a bit odd about the essay, the marker then investigates and then reports it to the department, and it's then investigated further. So you might be called before a panel of people to discuss your work, or it might be you might be asked to give a response to why have you plagiarised in this way. And if it is found that you have plagiarised, or that you have recycled your own text from another essay, you are then given a penalty.
Okay, I mean, the key thing is to make sure you reference.
Yeah.
So everything you use, make sure it's referenced, and give time to reference. There's no good in trying to cobble together an essay last minute and find that you haven't got time to properly, thoroughly reference.
Yeah.
Reference as you go, and if you haven't referenced as you've gone, make sure that you've got enough time to go back and just make sure that everything you've used from elsewhere is referenced. Also, if you're taking notes, if you're working in the library and you're taking notes on books, that's great, that's what you should be doing. But make sure that those notes are clear, make sure that you can use them, you can reference when you know where something's coming from, and don't take chunks of text and include them in your notes, because then the danger is that once you go to write the essay, you'll forget and you'll start to put them in the essay without not acknowledging where they're coming from.
So it's better even to write in your own words. While you're reading, think about what you're reading. Think about what this means, and so you can write your own thoughts as well then. And also, if you do come across an amazing sentence or a run of sentences, then by all means copy them down, but make sure they're in quotation marks, and that you remember that these are the words of the author you are reading.
Absolutely. We want to see that. We want to see that you've got material from elsewhere, but we want to see that that's their material, this is yours, this is you thinking about this.